The discipline that saved my life. Hi, my name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm here, and so are you. And if you're listening to this, I want to tell you something important right away. This could be the moment that changes your life. Not because I'm special, not because I have all the answers, but because I know what it feels like to waste your potential, and what it feels like to finally take it back. This is my story, about how one small change, one single habit, led me down a path that transformed my mind, my body, and my entire way of living. It wasn't motivation that saved me. It wasn't talent, or luck, or even some perfect morning routine from a book. It was something much simpler, and much harder: discipline. The lazy version of me. Let me be honest with you. I used to be lazy. Not in the funny, weekend couch potato kind of way. I mean truly, chronically, painfully undisciplined. Every morning, I'd wake up late. My alarm would ring at 7 o'clock. I'd snooze it until 8 o'clock. Sometimes 8:30. I'd lie in bed scrolling on my phone, watching videos of people doing things I wished I could do, but never doing them myself. I'd skip breakfast, rush through the day, get distracted by social media, waste hours, end the day feeling guilty and frustrated. Every night, I told myself the same lie: tomorrow will be different. But it never was. The breaking point didn't come during some big crisis. It came on a perfectly average Thursday afternoon. I had been lying on my couch for over an hour, watching my third YouTube video in a row. The room was messy. My to-do list was untouched. I had things to do, important things, but I couldn't move. I looked at the clock. 3:12 p.m. And I suddenly felt it. This overwhelming wave of disgust. Not anger, not sadness, just this cold, sharp realization. I'm wasting my life. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I had zero control over my actions. I knew exactly who I wanted to become, and I was doing the exact opposite every single day. That night, I sat in silence for a long time. No music, no phone, no distractions, just me and the uncomfortable truth. I pulled out an old notebook and wrote a sentence I didn't expect: discipline is the only way out. I didn't write goals. I didn't make a 90-day plan. I didn't download a new app. I just wrote that one sentence. And under it, one small action. Wake up at 5:30 a.m. Tomorrow. The first morning. When the alarm went off the next morning, my body screamed at me. Everything in me wanted to stay under the blanket. It was still dark outside. I was groggy, cold, tired, but I remembered the sentence. Discipline is the only way out. So I got up. I didn't do anything impressive. I didn't work out or meditate or write 10 pages in my journal. I just stood up, made my bed, drank a glass of water, and sat quietly for 10 minutes. That's it. But in that moment, something shifted. For the first time in months, maybe years, I did something hard just because I said I would. The power of one promise. Most people fail to change because they try to change everything at once. They create long lists, try to be perfect, burn out in 3 days. I didn't do that. I made one promise to myself: wake up at 5:30. Every day, no matter what. That became my anchor, my North Star, my training ground. I didn't rely on motivation, I built momentum. Some days were better than others. Some mornings I was alert and focused. Other mornings I was half asleep, barely functioning. But I showed up, every single time. And that consistency started to change how I saw myself. The silent transformation. After 2 weeks, something strange began to happen. I didn't need an alarm anymore. My body started waking up on its own. My thoughts were clearer. I started craving healthy food. I stopped needing sugar and caffeine to function. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was psychological. I started trusting myself again. You have no idea how powerful that is until you've lost it. When you say, "I'll do it," and you don't, day after day, you stop believing your own words. But when you make a promise and actually keep it, you build integrity, you build identity, you become someone you can count on. I wasn't perfect. There were days I wanted to sleep in. There were nights I stayed up too late. But I always came back to that promise. And over time, I began to add more. 10 minutes of journaling, a short walk after sunrise, stretching, reading one chapter of a book. None of it was dramatic. But it was consistent. And consistency is what rewires your life. Over time, my mornings became more than a routine, they became sacred. That might sound dramatic, but it's true. My mornings were no longer something I survived. They were something I owned. The first hours of the day became a space where I could reset, realign, and return to the person I was building. While the rest of the world was still asleep, I was already in motion, not fast, not perfect, but awake, aware, and present. I started to see how many people live in reaction. They wake up and immediately check their phones. They scroll through other people's lives before they've even stepped into their own. They respond to texts, check emails, jump into work, all before they've even had a chance to ask themselves how they feel. But not me, not anymore. I protected that first hour like my life depended on it. Because it did. That hour set the tone for everything else. The compound effect. The changes started stacking up. One morning, I added 5 minutes of stretching. A few days later, I added a 10-minute walk. After a while, I started reading a few pages of a good book before breakfast. Nothing extreme. No miracle, routine. Just a series of small, repeatable actions. That's the magic of the compound effect. One tiny action, done daily, seems meaningless at first. But after weeks, months, those tiny actions reshape who you are. I didn't just have better mornings. I had a better mindset. More energy, more focus, less anxiety, more control over my days. And all of that spilled into the rest of my life. Discipline in work. Once my mornings were in place, my work began to transform. Before this, I worked in chaos. I multitasked, checked notifications, let meetings bleed into each other, started a dozen things and finished none. But now, I had structure. I started doing deep work sessions, 90 minutes of focused, uninterrupted effort. Phone on silent, email closed, social media logged out. I worked less, but achieved more. Because when you eliminate distraction and start trusting your ability to focus, you unlock something rare, creative clarity. Ideas flow easier. You make decisions faster. You actually finish what you start. And most importantly, you enjoy the process. The emotional ripple. Discipline doesn't just change your schedule. It changes your emotional life. Before, I was quick to anger, quick to stress, quick to get overwhelmed. Now, I was steady, centered, grounded. Why? Because I wasn't constantly overwhelmed by chaos. I had systems, habits, anchors. Even when life got crazy, I had a foundation to fall back on. I wasn't perfect. I still felt emotions, but I didn't get swept away by them anymore. And that emotional stability made me a better friend, a better partner, a better human. The mirror moment. One morning, about 3 months into my new lifestyle, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I was tying my shoes, getting ready for a walk. And I froze. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Not because of how I looked, but because of how I felt. There was strength in my posture, calm in my face, confidence in my presence. It hit me. I'm not faking this anymore. This is who I really am now. I had become the kind of person I used to envy. Not by pretending, but by practicing. Every small choice had led to this version of me, and I liked him. Discipline as identity. That's when I learned a powerful truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And you live at the level of your identity. I used to say, I'm not a morning person. Now I said, I start strong, every day. I used to say, I'm not consistent. Now I said, I keep my promises, especially to myself. These weren't affirmations. These were facts, built from action. Discipline wasn't a thing I did. It was who I was. And the more I embraced that identity, the easier everything became. I stopped negotiating with my lazy self. I stopped chasing motivation. I stopped asking how I felt every morning. I just acted, because I was no longer hoping for discipline. I was living it. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't glamorous. But it was honest. And it was mine. Over time, my mornings became more than a routine, they became sacred. That might sound dramatic, but it's true. My mornings were no longer something I survived. They were something I owned. The first hours of the day became a space where I could reset, realign, and return to the person I was building. While the rest of the world was still asleep, I was already in motion, not fast, not perfect, but awake, aware, and present. I started to see how many people live in reaction. They wake up and immediately check their phones. They scroll through other people's lives before they've even stepped into their own. They respond to texts, check emails, jump into work, all before they've even had a chance to ask themselves how they feel. But not me. Not anymore. I protected that first hour like my life depended on it. Because it did. That hour set the tone for everything else. Let me take you deeper into what happens when discipline becomes not just what you do, but who you are. Because once you live this way long enough, you don't just build routines, you build character. And character is what carries you when life gets heavy. When things are easy, everyone shows up. But when life punches you in the face, when the alarm rings after 3 hours of sleep, when your plans fall apart, when no one's watching and no one would blame you for quitting, that's when discipline matters most. And in those moments, your habits will either save you or expose you. The slump. I wish I could tell you I kept going upward forever. But I didn't. After about 5 months, I hit a slump. Not because I wanted to, but because life got in the way. I had a rough week. My workload increased. I got sick. A personal issue knocked the wind out of me. And just like that, the routine slipped. I missed a workout, then another. Started sleeping later. Stopped journaling. The momentum faded, and the voice in my head returned. See? You're back to your old self. You were never really disciplined. You were just pretending. And for a few days, I believed it. The return. But then something powerful happened. I didn't stay down. I remembered something I had learned during those early days. Missing one day doesn't break you. Quitting does. So I got up. No big motivational speech. No perfect morning. Just one choice. Get back to the promise. I made my bed. Drank water. Did 10 push-ups. Opened my journal. That was it. But that was enough. Because getting back on track is what builds real strength. Anyone can start. But those who return after slipping, that's where the winners live. The discipline of saying no. As I got stronger, I realized something I had been avoiding. Discipline isn't just about what you do. It's also about what you don't do. I used to say yes to everything. Yes to every social invite. Yes to every distraction. Yes to other people's priorities over my own. But slowly, I began to say no more often. Not because I was rude, but because I was clear. I knew what mattered, and if something didn't align, I let it go. Every no I said was a yes to my mission. And the more I said no to nonsense, the more time, energy, and clarity I had. From hustle to presence, there's a dangerous version of discipline, one that turns into obsession. The grind, the hustle, the no days off mentality. I flirted with that for a while. Waking up earlier, training harder, doing more, trying to prove I was worthy. But it wasn't healthy. I was chasing perfection again, the very thing I thought I had escaped. Until one morning, I burned out. Mentally, physically, emotionally. And in that low moment, I asked myself, what's the point of discipline if it doesn't make me better, just busier? That's when I made a crucial shift. From hustle to presence. I didn't need to do more. I needed to be here more. Discipline became less about effort and more about alignment. The deep why. One evening, while journaling, I wrote a question to myself. Why'd I want this? Not, why'd I want to wake up early, or, why'd I want to be productive? No, why'd I want to be disciplined in the first place? And after a full page of writing, it came down to this, because I don't want to waste the one life I've been given. That was it. Not for approval, not for applause, not for social media, just to live fully, with purpose. To use every bit of my potential before I leave this earth. That became my fuel. On hard days, I didn't need hype. I just needed to remember why I started. Helping others rise. As I continued on this journey, something beautiful happened. People noticed. Friends, family, strangers online. They started asking questions, looking for guidance, searching for the spark they saw in me. And at first, I hesitated. Who was I to teach discipline? But then I remembered. I wasn't perfect. I was real. And that's what people needed. Not a guru, but a guide. So I started helping. One conversation at a time. One shared routine. One honest story. And it felt amazing. Because nothing feels better than helping someone else unlock what you fought hard to build. Discipline changed my life. Not just the way I lived it, but the way I saw myself. By now, it wasn't a habit I was practicing. It was a standard I was living. And with that came something I never expected. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having nothing to do, or escaping to a beach. No, this was a deep, grounded peace. The kind that grows when you know who you are, and you're actually living that way. The unexpected gift. Before discipline, my life felt scattered. Like I was running all the time but never getting anywhere. Now, for the first time, I felt still, even while in motion. I could walk slower, breathe deeper, talk more softly, decide with clarity. That didn't mean I was less ambitious. It meant I was more centered. And from that center, everything became easier. Conversations became more honest, work became more focused, even rest became more restful. Discipline had created space, and in that space, peace could finally grow. My relationships transformed. Let's talk about something personal. Relationships. Before I developed discipline, I wasn't the best version of myself with people. I was reactive, impatient, often distracted. I'd say I cared about people, but I rarely showed up fully. I'd cancel plans, forget birthdays, avoid difficult conversations. But once I built inner stability, everything changed. I could listen better. I could sit in silence without needing to fix everything. I could express what I wanted, and hear what others needed. Why? Because discipline gave me emotional space. And that space allowed for deeper connection. I became the example. After about a year of living this way, people started to notice. not just my energy, but my results. Friends said things like, "Man, you're so consistent. How do you stay on track? You're like a completely different person." But I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't flexing my discipline. I was simply living in alignment. And that alignment was magnetic. That's when I realized something powerful. When you live with integrity, you become an example, whether you intend to or not. People aren't changed by your advice. They're changed by your example. I stopped apologizing for my standards. At some point, I stopped hiding my discipline. I stopped feeling awkward about going to bed early, or skipping late-night parties, or choosing water instead of beer. I stopped explaining my routines. Stopped justifying my lifestyle. I had nothing to prove. Because I knew my standards weren't limitations. They were freedom. They freed me from inconsistency, regret, exhaustion, drama. When people asked why I lived this way, I'd just smile and say, because it works for me. That's enough. I didn't preach. I didn't pressure anyone. I just owned my truth. And that truth inspired others more than any argument ever could. The new normal. The biggest transformation happened quietly, the day I realized discipline was no longer a battle. It had become normal. I didn't argue with myself about waking up early. I didn't debate whether to train. I didn't struggle to say no to distractions. It was just what I did. And in that simplicity, I found power. Life stopped being a daily fight. It became a daily rhythm. Not perfect. Not robotic, but reliable. And that reliability gave me confidence. Not just in what I could do, but in who I was becoming. I learned to forgive faster. Another shift surprised me. I became more forgiving. Not just toward others, but toward myself. Before discipline, I was harsh with myself. If I made a mistake, I'd punish myself mentally for days. If I broke a promise, I'd spiral into guilt. But now, if I slipped, I owned it, learned from it, and moved on. No shame, no drama. Because true discipline isn't rigid, it's resilient. It bends when life hits hard. It flexes, adapts, adjusts. But it never disappears. It always returns. Life got simpler. Ironically, the more structure I added to my life, the simpler everything became. I had fewer decisions to make. I knew when I was waking up, what I was eating, when I was working, how I was recovering. No more wasted mental energy. No more chaos disguised as freedom. I had margins in my day. I had time to think, to breathe, to create. That simplicity made me sharper, clearer, more alive. I stopped chasing stimulation, and I started enjoying stillness. By now, you might be wondering, was it all just morning routines, workouts, and journaling? No. Discipline showed up in every area of my life. And some of the most powerful moments came not from big achievements, but from small decisions made in silence, when no one was watching, when no one cared, and when only I would know the difference. That's where discipline really lives, in the dark corners, in the quiet spaces, in the choice to hold the line when it's easier to let go. Financial discipline. Let's talk money. Before, I spent without thinking. I chased pleasure, bought things I didn't need, told myself, I deserve it, every time I felt bored or stressed. But with discipline, I started asking better questions. Do I really need this? Will this bring lasting value? What would the future version of me want me to do? And the answers changed everything. I stopped shopping for identity. Stopped wasting money on impressing people. Started saving. Started investing. Started living below my means. And with that came freedom. Not because I was rich, but because I was in control. Digital discipline. Then came the digital world. I used to be addicted to my phone, like most people. checking it first thing in the morning, scrolling late at night, picking it up without thinking every few minutes. But one day I asked myself, if a stranger controlled my attention the way my phone does, wouldn't I call that toxic? So I made changes. I deleted apps, set screen time limits, created phone-free zones in my home, left my phone in another room when I worked. Was it easy? No. Was it worth it? Absolutely. My focus came back. My anxiety dropped. My creativity returned. Because when you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your life. The hard conversations. Discipline isn't just about habits. It's about honesty. And sometimes, honesty requires courage. There were conversations I had been avoiding for years, apologies I hadn't made, boundaries I hadn't set, truths I hadn't told. But with discipline came strength. And with strength came integrity. I started speaking up, not perfectly, but truthfully. Not aggressively, but clearly. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And each time I told the truth, I felt lighter, cleaner, stronger. Because honesty is heavy until you release it. Then it frees you. Discipline in saying, I don't know. There was another kind of discipline I didn't expect. The discipline of humility. I used to pretend I had answers. Nod my head in conversations. Act like I understood when I didn't. But that was ego. And ego is fragile. Now, I had nothing to prove. If I didn't know something, I said it. If I was wrong, I admitted it. If I needed help, I asked. And something amazing happened. People respected me more, not less. Because real strength isn't pretending to be perfect. It's being confident enough to be real. The energy shift. Discipline also changed my energy, literally. Before, I was drained by everything. I'd need coffee to start the day. I'd crash in the afternoon. I'd struggle to sleep at night. But as I became more consistent, my body responded. I slept better, ate better, moved more. And without realizing it, I had built an energy loop. Wake up right pointing arrow, move right pointing arrow, eat well right pointing arrow, work right pointing arrow, rest right pointing arrow, repeat. Each good decision fueled the next one. And suddenly, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was thriving. Energy wasn't something I chased. It was something I generated, through discipline. I no longer needed motivation. This might be the biggest shift of all. I stopped needing motivation. I used to wait for it like rain in a desert. Watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, reading quotes, hoping to get hyped. Now, I don't wait for motivation. I create momentum. Through action, through structure, through discipline. Motivation is like a spark. It comes and goes. But discipline? That's the fire you build every day, and protect with everything you've got. We're almost there. But before we wrap up, I want to take you even deeper, into the part of the journey most people don't talk about. Because yes, discipline gave me energy, focus, results, and peace. But it also gave me something much harder to earn: resilience. And resilience, I've come to believe, is the hidden treasure at the end of the discipline path. Discipline through loss. Life isn't always neat. Sometimes, it knocks the wind out of you. I remember the moment I lost someone close to me. It wasn't expected, and it crushed me. Grief, if you've ever felt it, is heavy. It fogs your brain. It pulls the color out of everything. It makes even the smallest tasks feel impossible. And during that time, I didn't care about routines. Didn't care about goals. Didn't care about anything. But do you know what saved me? Not willpower. Not positivity. Not even time. It was discipline. Because even in the darkness, I had something to hold on to. I still drank water. Still took walks. Still journaled. Even if it was just one line. This hurts. And those tiny acts, they reminded me, I'm still here. Discipline became my anchor, not to escape pain, but to stay connected to life while I healed. The power of repetition. People often ask, don't you get bored doing the same things every day? My answer? No, because repetition isn't boring when it has purpose. I don't brush my teeth for excitement. I do it because it matters. The same goes for everything else. Waking up early, reading, moving, reflecting. These aren't glamorous, but they're grounding. And the deeper I went, the more I realized. The goal isn't to be entertained, it's to be aligned. Repetition, done mindfully, builds mastery. And mastery creates freedom. The trap of comparison. As I grew, I started comparing myself less. Because I realized, discipline quiets comparison. Why? Because when you're focused on your own process, you stop obsessing over someone else's progress. I used to look at others and feel behind. Now I look at them and feel happy for them. And proud of me, not because I've arrived, but because I'm showing up every day. Discipline taught me this. Don't compete. Commit. Commit to your growth, your journey, your lane. Because when you stay in your lane, there's no traffic. I stopped starting over. Here's a confession. Before this transformation, I was always starting over. New diets, new plans, new habits. I'd get excited, jump in, burn out, quit, then repeat. But now, I don't start over. I continue, even when I miss a day, even when I mess up, even when life gets messy. Why? Because this isn't a phase. It's a lifestyle. Discipline isn't about being perfect every day. It's about showing up again, especially after you fall. And that's where real transformation happens. The inner voice. One of the most profound changes? The voice in my head. It used to say, you're lazy. You'll never change. You're weak. But now it says, let's get after it. You've done harder things, one step at a time. Not because I rewired my brain with affirmations, but because I proved it to myself, daily. Discipline changed how I speak to myself. And that changes everything. Because when your inner voice becomes your ally, you no longer need external validation. You become self-led, self-powered, self-trusting. The discipline of rest. Now, here's something that surprised even me. Discipline isn't just about pushing harder. It's about knowing when to rest. I used to grind until I collapsed. Now, I rest intentionally. I schedule breaks, honor my sleep, protect my peace. Why? Because discipline isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most, consistently. And sometimes, what matters most is to stop, to breathe, to heal, to recharge. Burnout is not a badge of honor. Recovery is not a weakness. It's wisdom. My future self. Every time I wanted to quit, I pictured someone. Not a celebrity. Not a role model. Me, 10 years from now. Older, wiser, stronger, calmer. I'd imagine sitting with him, asking, was it worth it? And he'd smile and say, every bit of it. That image kept me moving. Because I wasn't just building discipline for today. I was building a future I'd be proud to live in. This is the final part of the journey, but in many ways, it's just the beginning. Because discipline didn't give me a perfect life. It gave me the tools to handle an imperfect one, with strength, clarity, and purpose. So in this last part, I want to share not just what I did, but what I now believe. Not just how I changed, but who I became. The discipline of purpose. At first, discipline was just about habits. Then it became about transformation. But eventually, it pointed me to something deeper. Purpose. Why am I here? What am I meant to build? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? These weren't questions I could answer overnight. But discipline gave me the space to sit with them. It cleared the noise, cleared the clutter, helped me hear my own voice. And from that voice came direction. Not a detailed plan, but a deeper knowing that I was here to create, to serve, to grow, to help others rise. The discipline of service. Discipline also shifted my focus outward. It stopped being about me, my goals, my schedule, my self-improvement. It became about us, our shared struggle, our shared growth. I began mentoring others, supporting people who were just starting, not as a guru, but as a fellow traveler. And something incredible happened. The more I served, the stronger my own discipline became. Why? Because now, it wasn't just about me. I had people depending on me. I had a message to protect. I had a standard to embody. And that accountability made me sharper, more honest, more real. What I tell people now, when people ask me, how do I become more disciplined? I say, start small. Be consistent. Don't wait to feel ready. Make one promise. Keep it, then make another. Don't build a life of hype. Build a life of habits. Because hype fades, but habits endure. And don't chase motivation. Chase alignment. Ask, who do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to wake up to? What would that version of me do right now? Then do that. No one else can do it for you. But you don't have to do it alone, either. Final reflections. Looking back, I'm not proud of every step. I failed a lot, fell off track, said things I regret, made decisions out of fear. But I kept coming back. Back to the basics. Back to the truth. Back to the discipline. And every time I returned, I became a little stronger. This journey didn't save me because it was easy. It saved me because it was real. Because it taught me that change is possible. That growth is messy. That freedom is earned. That discipline is not punishment, it's permission. Permission to build, to live with intention, to become the person you were always meant to be. My life today. Today, I'm not perfect. I still struggle, still forget, still need reminders. But I'm grounded, clear, strong. I wake up with purpose. I move with peace. I lead with integrity. I'm not chasing a fantasy anymore. I'm building a foundation. And that foundation holds me. When life shakes, when fear whispers, when old patterns try to return. I'm no longer afraid of discipline. I'm grateful for it, because it didn't just improve my mornings. It saved my life. Your turn. If you've made it this far, I want you to hear this clearly. You can do this. You can build a life rooted in discipline, one step, one habit, one choice at a time. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to begin. And when you fall, return. When you're tired, rest, then return. When you're doubting, remember your why. This is your journey now. And you're not alone. Because every person who chooses discipline chooses freedom. And every person who chooses freedom becomes a light to others. So take that first step. Or the next one. Or the next. Your future self is waiting. And they're going to be proud of you. Thanks for listening. If this story inspired you, even just a little, don't forget to hit subscribe. We share powerful stories and practical tips every week to help you grow stronger, stay focused, and live with purpose. So join the community, and let's keep building the life you deserve, together. Subscribe now and never stop becoming.